I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make chocolate chip shortbread cookies, and this is what they look like. This cookie is buttery sweet, and as you can see, it's full of chocolate chips, and the texture, just love it. It's wonderfully crisp. You know, it's a perfect cookie with a hot cup of tea. So, to make the batter, if you have a stand mixer like I have here, you use the paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really this batter is so easy to make. You could just have a large bowl with a wooden spoon. The first thing you will need, shortbread is all about the butter. It's really just three basic ingredients: butter, sugar, flour. So for the butter, you will need a half a cup, which is 113 grams, of butter. Have it at room temperature. Now, I'm using unsalted butter because I like the flavor, and I also like the fact that unsalted, I can control the amount of salt in my cookie. But if you have a favorite salted butter, go ahead and use that. And I would just leave out the salt called for in the recipe. So just put that right in there, along with a quarter of a cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. Now mine's not white because I'm using organic cane sugar, but either one. And I'm also adding 2 tablespoons, 25 grams of light brown sugar. So what I'm going to do with the shortbread batter, we just want to mix the ingredients together. We don't want to beat, some cookies you want to beat it like medium, high to get a lot of air in the batter. No, shortbread are very dense in texture. So when we beat it, we want to beat it on medium-low speed. So, or if you're using a bowl, just mix it with your wooden spoon. And just until the sugar is incorporated into the butter. Okay, that's simple enough. Let's give it a good scrape. Whenever you're making any kind of batter, you want to periodically stop the mixer and scrape down the bottom, and especially the bottom because it gets stuck there, and the sides. You want to make sure everything gets mixed together. And so now, flour. You will need 1 cup, which is 130 grams all-purpose flour or plain flour. To that, I'm adding a quarter of a teaspoon, 1 gram of salt, table salt, kosher salt, sea salt, whatever you like. And I'm just going to put that right in there, along with flour, a half a cup, which is 85 grams of chocolate chips. Now, you could use semi-sweet, bittersweet, even milk chocolate chips. I'm using, mine are kind of more towards the bittersweets, about 60%. And the other thing, if you don't want to use chocolate chips, you could actually take a 3-ounce, about 85 gram, like a chocolate bar, like either semi-sweet or bittersweet or milk, and then just chop it up into, coarse pieces. Now, even, I'm just going to get out, I know this is chocolate chip shortbread, but if you didn't want, this batter is just good just on its own. So you don't even have to add the chocolate chips, or you could even add a half a cup, 50 grams of chopped nuts. So, this is a great, versatile recipe that you can have fun with. So I'm just going to, again, on medium-low speed, just mix everything together till it starts to clump. Okay, it's not a solid ball, but it's starting to really big clumps. So we are done. Now, what we're going to do is make this shortbread into like a slice and bake cookie. So we're going to form the batter into a log shape. A lot of shortbread recipes, you roll it out and cut it into individual cookies, which you could do with this batter, but we're going to do something a little different than what I normally do and do the slice and bake, because what I like, the thing is, once we form it into the log, and you have to chill it, but you could just put that log in the freezer. So it's a great make ahead cookie, and then whenever you want to make the cookies, you just take it out of the freezer, slice them, bake them. Instant cookies. So what I've done, I put a piece of plastic wrap, large piece of plastic wrap here because I'm going to do the log. You could use parchment paper, you could use wax paper. And what I'm going to do is just with my hands, mix this together. I kind of squeeze it a little because I want to make sure there's no air pockets. You know how sometimes you do if you've done a slice and bake cookie and then you start slicing it and there's little like air pockets, which is fine. You just kind of squeeze the batter together, but you know, we'll try to prevent that. I'm just going to put this, excuse me, behind here. So now, I'm going to roll this into about a 10-inch long, 25 centimeter log. And that will give us, it'd be about 1.5 inches in diameter, which is about 4 centimeters. Now, if you want, that gives us like about this size cookie. So if you wanted bigger cookies, then you would make like a smaller log, maybe 8-9 inches, 20-23 centimeters. But you know, I like they're very buttery and they're sweet. I find one cookie, if I'm good, will satisfy. So now I've got it now I'm just going to roll it into a log and just stop, you know, and kind of, you want to try to make the whole thing the exact same diameter. And you can have your trusty ruler here, or you can just eyeball it to what you want. Now this recipe will give us, I would say, you know, anywhere between 25 and 30 cookies. So if you wanted to make 2 logs, all you would do is double the recipe. And when I say double the recipe, that means just double all the ingredients and then divide it in half and make 2 logs. So if that's what you want to do. And then what I do is I just kind of, you know, even up. That's okay. So I'm happy with that. That's about right. So now I'm just going to take plastic wrap and roll it up like so. Now we have to chill this for at least 4-6 hours. I actually prefer to chill it overnight. Or like I said, you could just put it in the freezer. Now, this is the one problem I've always had. If you do this, you know, you've rolled it, your batter is fairly soft. So when you put it in the fridge like this, it tends to sink down. Have you ever had that? So you don't have a round, you kind of have like an oval. And then sometimes what I do is I take it out and I re-roll it like after about an hour. It's a lot of fussing. So what you know, I read it somewhere or saw it on the net, is you take like the inside roll of your paper towel like this, and then I cut it like so, just down there, and then, I mean, this is ingenious. Then I just put it over like that, and you know, it just seems to, it doesn't settle down. I get a fairly good round circle. So then what I do is I just take some tape. Hopefully it'll stick because my hands are all buttery. And then I just tape it up like that. And then make sure you twist the ends of your either plastic wrap to seal that. And you put it in the fridge. And hopefully we will get nice round cookies. Like I said, chill it. I typically do it overnight, but you know, 4 to 6 hours. And then when we come back, we will bake off our cookies. So now we're ready to bake off our cookies. First thing you need to do is to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. And then you will need a baking sheet. I've lined mine with parchment, but you could just lightly butter or even spray it with one of those non-stick sprays. Now, it takes about 15 minutes to preheat your oven. So while that's happening, what I do is I take out my cookie log, because especially I usually chill it overnight. It gets really firm and then it kind of gets hard to cut it. So what I let it do is sit about 15 minutes just on the counter, and then it would warm up enough that I find I can slice them fairly easy. Now, you can really make these as thick or as thin as you want. I find I go usually about 1/3 of an inch, I guess it's about 1 centimeter. What you can do a couple different ways. You can just eyeball it, which I tend to do. The important thing is that every cookie be about the same thickness so they all bake in the same amount of time. So if you wanted less than 1/3 of an inch or more, just try to keep them all the same. Now what you can do is take a ruler and then just mark it off, make little, notches, and then that will help you, or just eyeball it, which I'm going to do today. I'm just going to eyeball it. So just take your knife, cutting board, and slice straight down. Now, because we're using chocolate chips, you may find it kind of falls apart as you're cutting it. Don't worry. Just kind of put it like back into a round. It'll all work out once they bake off. But I find warming the log up just a little helps to, they don't fall apart quite as much. And if they're not perfectly round, like once you cut them, you can just kind of fix it. Although, you know what? This is a home baked, so don't worry too much if they're not perfect, because it's home baking. We're not in a bakery. So I'm putting about 12. I could have probably fit 15, but I'll do 12 today. So now to bake them off. The thing with shortbread, the longer you bake them, the more crisp they will become. So what I like is that they turn golden brown, especially around the edges, because I must admit, I like mine fairly crisp. So I'm going to say somewhere between 13 and 15 minutes. Again, it depends on the thickness that you cut. It depends on your oven. Everybody's oven's a little different. And then how crisp you want them. So I'm going to say 13 to 15 minutes till they're especially golden brown around the edges. I do rotate the baking sheet front to back about halfway through, just to get because usually you have hot spots in your oven, so give a better even bake. Okay, our shortbreads are done. So put your baking sheet on a wire rack, and don't they look gorgeous? Nicely browned around the edges, just how I like them. Like I said, if you want them like even more crisp, you could push it a minute or two longer, or if you want them a little softer, you could go the other way a minute or two. So what I like to do is typically let them sit about 5 minutes, and then I just take my spatula and move them over. So what I'll do is, might wreck one here, I'll just flip it over here, and see it's golden brown on the bottom. That's how I like mine. Now you want to let them cool at least, I would say, 30 to 60 minutes. You got to come down to room temperature because they're very soft right now. So you got to let them cool down so they'll crisp up. Then you can eat them. But when you make a shortbread with chocolate chips, if you eat them like the first day, what you will find is that I find the chocolate part kind of overpowers the buttery shortbread. Especially like here, I'm kind of almost a bittersweet chocolate. So I find if I eat them the first day, really all I taste is the chocolate chips, which I have nothing wrong with that. But I like to also taste the shortbread. So what I do, and if you can resist, is I store them overnight, at least a day, maybe 2 days, and then, the flavor kind of mingles, and I just think they get better tasting, personally. So you might want to try that. Try them the first day and then store them a day or two and try them. I find there's a difference. So what I'm going to do, I made these actually a couple days ago, so I'm going to try this one. And so you can cover and store these, I would say 7 to 10 days at least, at room temperature. If you store them in the refrigerator, which I tend to because I live in the South and it's kind of warm, so I store them in the fridge. You could probably push them off, like they will store them for a couple weeks. But you can also freeze the baked cookies. So not only can you freeze the unbaked log, you can also freeze the baked cookies. So oh, I love this. I've been testing this recipe for a couple weeks, and I need to stop. I'm kind of glad I did the video because I'm eating them every day with having a cup of tea, and oh, I'll have a shortbread cookie, and I need to stop that because they're just so good. The crispness, you know, the one thing about shortbread is the texture. I mean, you can't beat that. That nice crisp texture and the butter. I didn't add any vanilla extract. Now you could add, you know, a half to 1 teaspoon of vanilla. But you know, when I make a shortbread now, one, because if you've gone to buy vanilla, the price is just in the last, say, 5 years, just gone through the roof. But also now, I just like to taste the butter, you know, and just the simplicity of taste there, of the shortbread, just the butter and a little sweetness, and it's just wonderful. And then adding the chocolate chips to me, because I love chocolate, perfect combo. So you must make these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.